Hello.
Hey.
We come around in a somewhat unusual time, but still, this is Biweeklycast, and this is the next episode number 19, and the host is still here. It's me, Dima, and...
I'm Slava, and today we're going to talk about to-don't lists. But before we get there, there's a follow-up.
Actually, there are two bits of follow-up. One, I guess, didn't make it to this because I typed it on the tube and it maybe did not sync from my phone. But the first one is nonetheless yours. Well, the person sending messages.
Sorry?
Didn't you add this piece of follow-up? The person who sends automated messages and reach outs?
No, not really.
Interesting. I guess my memory fails me here because apparently that was me, and this is one of those things. I added this one when maybe I was editing the episode or something like this. I had an idea, and this is an illustration for why you want to be specific with things you put out there. For the life of me, I don't remember what I meant by this, but
fortunately for us, Notion has the history, and it is your point.
Yeah, of course. Now I vaguely remember adding this, but I don't remember now. Like, why?
So we don't have a follow-up.
No. We do. Remember how I said about the second item, which didn't make it through the internet waves from the tube, and we had a little bit of conversation or chat with our previous guest Yulia Kudina. Had a chat in chat. Do people say like this? Nonetheless, and I think Yulia brought up there an interesting idea that for networking with people, one might use applications or services that use geolocation kind of feature to find people in the neighborhood who do the same thing. I think it can really work with something like sports and running and stuff like that. I thought that was an interesting idea that Yulia brought up.
Absolutely. And these apps are usually related to a specific sort of activity, but there is also an app named Breakfast that just matches you with people around, which also works sometimes. It didn't work for me, but it might work for someone else.
So then, I guess after this fiasco with follow-up, we can try to move on to the topic. And that was my idea, kind of to talk about to-don't lists. And I think the way how I came to this topic was quite interesting. In recent time, my role and responsibilities started changing a little bit, which, if you think rationally about it, means that I need to pick up new things that I should do to match new expectations. But this also means that I should stop doing some of the things I used to do, which no longer are a good match for my role. And I started thinking that, hey, maybe I should come up with a list of things that I explicitly shouldn't do, and check whatever I plan on doing against that list. And this is how I came with the idea of to-don't list. Even though internally I didn't call it like that, I said like things that I should not be doing. And then there was an episode of the podcast called Focused, which was called the to-don't list. It got me really excited. I listened to it, and I was a bit disappointed about that, but about their interpretation of to-don't lists. But I guess we will get to this. So to me, I'm super interested in this topic in a sense that I'm working through my to-don't list to make sure I have enough time and energy and capacity to work on things what's the opposite of to-don't? Like to really do, or something like that?
Well, basically, if I got it right, you're working on the refreshing your priority system. and you would like to see where to focus more of your attention and where to stop focusing your attention.
Right. Yep. Something like that.
All right. I think we could start with a definition. And what would be your definition of
well,
to-don't list?
Yeah, my definition of how I started approaching this topic was a list of things that should not get on my to-do list. So,
like a filter, basically.
like a filter, or like an example, a list of things that I should not expect to see on my to-do list. Not like the habits, the practices, but just like real, tangible tasks or something that could be on my to-do list, but they shouldn't.
Don't talk to Charles.
No, because not like this, because this would be more of a behavior things. Like, don't have one-on-one, like don't schedule one-on-one meetings with Charles would be such a thing if I decided that is not the thing for me to do.
Okay, fair enough. But I think that both in the episode and then in the articles that you attach, people see it much more broadly, I would say. And it feels as if they're fighting a number of issues with this tool. Like, not just the priorities that you're talking about, but also bad habits, distractors, procrastination, and many other negative effects that they just try to list and make more conscious, get more conscious about it.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. They like, in the wildest sense, I think they just talk about a list of things that start with don't. And they don't. At times, they did not feel like they have a particularly good structure to that, and they seem to be all over the place. And here we are referring to that episode of the podcast Focus, but then the hosts there, they mentioned article in Inc.com, which is titled "Why Everyone Should Have a To-Don't List," according to the Harvard professor, and 8 ideas on what to add to yours. That's a mouthful of a title for an article. It will be linked in the show notes. And I was surprised actually by how generic and all over the board those items were. Because I kind of thought that we kind of agreed that good to do items are specific, right? You can actually do them and put checkbox next to them when you are done. And this is what I expected from those to-don't lists.
I think there was one that kind of was specific. It was about scheduling meetings without agenda.
Right.
But again, it's not a to-don't list. It's more like a checklist for scheduling meetings. Like, keep in mind that you should do that. It's more of a to-do rather than don't.
Right. And then on their list, they have items like don't complain, don't allow jealousy into your life. Yeah, I kind of get the idea, but how I don't do that's interesting. But regardless of these differences in definitions, has it ever occurred to you to think about something like this, or to introduce that into your working process or planning process, or just in your thinking about work?
No, and I don't think I ever will, but I can definitely see how it might be useful for some other people. I think that the biggest difference here is that almost most of these things could be easily transferred into to-do items and into habits, positive habits. Like, instead of don't sit in one place for more than 1 hour, you could easily convert that into move around at least once an hour or something along those lines. And right. For my type of mindset, it's much easier to work with something actionable rather than restrictive. But I can definitely imagine that it might be for someone's mindset to build up such limitations and restrictions that would work better than strict actionable items.
Oh, interesting. Because I hope that this thing can help me a little bit, and to give you and our listeners an example of the things I currently have on my to-don't list. One of the items is to don't immediately jump to help others when they come to me for help or advice. I know that I have this tendency to when usually people would come to me when something is broken, and maybe I know a little bit more about this particular area, and I by default, like, hey, something is broken, I'll be on alert and jump into resolve to confirm the magnitude of the problem or confirm if there is a problem at all. And depending on the situation, quite a lot of my time can sink into that, and that's in retrospective, looking at this, I don't think what's probably not the best application of my effort and energy. So I want to not to jump to help immediately, but go filter those requests through some sort of criteria. Like, of course, if it's emergency and things are on fire, of course I will jump to help. But I want to stop this being a default mode of operation, that I automatically add this as an item for me to do with high priority. Something like that.
That sounds fair. And I know, I think someone, probably one of my colleagues, I can't really remember who, but named such a thing as firefighter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Like whenever there is an alarm, you just give up whatever you were doing and jump, because it's an emergency, you have to help. And this sort of emergency is subjective. And this is, I think, I can see that your to don't item is split with some exceptions, like unless it's something. But this is, I think, a trap, because what seems like an emergency for someone might not seem like an emergency for you. And the way you define an emergency could be very different. Mm-hmm. And quite often when people reach out for help, they can frame it, and before you actually dig into, you can't understand whether it's that urgent and that critical or not. And like, who defines this emergency or crucial status?
Well, I guess since this is an item, this item is guidance for me, I get to decide what's emergency. I probably would not go into too much detail, but I think I would have, based on my past experience with items like this, I would know what qualifies as an emergency. This would be a request where
my bet, if there is something that you don't fully understand and you don't know the answer immediately, you'll be too curious to understand whether it's an emergency, and this investigation might get you like pulled in.
Right, and this is what I want to change. I want to, like, with this to don't items, I want to maybe provide advice or guidance, or like direct the person who comes with requests into towards how they can probably resolve this themselves, or what I suggest as a next step working on this problem, but not to get involved unless and to have that unless be like as small as I can get it, if that makes sense.
All right. So for me, like for my type of thinking, I would reframe this into something like, in case someone asks for help, do A, B, and C, and create an algorithm what I should do if a request comes. Because if I make a don't list, it still kind of leaves me like, what should I do? Like, I can't help, I don't jump, but like, do I reject, or do I redirect, or do I just ignore it, or wait, or like, very vague.
I agree with you. And I guess that this comes to difficulty in writing or conveying ideas, because here I put this specifically as a to don't item, like things as a thing I don't want to do. But in my mind, I just didn't write it. I would have a plan of what I would, how I would respond in order to avoid being dragged into this thing. It's just not here. And you are absolutely right that this don't item can be, I guess, more productively replaced by do items. Like when request comes in, do this instead of don't do something else.
I guess so. And I'm not really sure who was the author of that book about habits. I think we have discussed it, or at least I remember talking to you about it. But the idea there is a trigger, there is a behavior, and there's sort of reward, and it circles around. And I think that for me, to don't could work only when you spot a trigger. It shouldn't work on the behavior, because if you can block out the triggers for a negative habit,
Mm-hmm.
like don't check this chat at all, like that could work as a to don't thing, like just mute it and leave it and never come back. But if the trigger has worked, I personally need a really paved path to follow. And if it's not paved, I will probably jump into the habit I don't like.
Right. Well, I guess that's by and large that's what I'm trying to achieve now with this to don't list, is to form new pathways for new habits, for new types of work, and maybe change habits for the types of work I was already engaged in.
Okay, can we try the second point? When you don't like what or how people are doing something, you tend to step up to replace them, and your to don't item is don't do that.
Yeah.
But what will you be doing when you see someone failing or doing something wrong?
Maybe it's not as harsh as failing or doing something wrong. It's just like I said, I don't like not up to
as effectively as
not up to my liking, not how I would imagine this thing being done, or something along those lines. I guess my plan would be to double down on kind of providing feedback and thinking and rationale for why it may be beneficial to do it some other way, like my way. But well, as you aptly put it, maybe avoid the firefighter syndrome, and instead of being triggered, oh no, like something gets done in a ever so slightly suboptimal way, or just in a different way, not the way how I imagined I need to fix this. Like just stop it, chill down, and then be considerate, and once again be thoughtful, and allow myself enough time to process it, and so on and so forth, and not be dragged
basically
into something.
Your 2 action items here is to chill and then to give more feedback.
Yes. So yes, instead of like in the first item as well, right? Instead of jumping in, chill down, provide in every ambiguous situation, provide feedback instead of jumping in or something like that.
Do you think the third point works the same way?
Yep, that's the third. The third point reads as I would love to avoid committing myself to substantial amounts of highly detailed work, like lower level work, because no matter what I try and how I try to approach this, I kind of struggle with combining the high level work that I usually need to do by kind of doing like high level system design, aligning the responsibilities, concepts, and then stuff like building abstractions and stuff like that, with the lower level work of actually implementing those abstractions, when I have to, in the same period of time, have between high and low levels of abstractions. I tend to kind of stick to the low level of abstraction thing and miss important things on the high level. And for what I'm doing now, the high level would be more important than getting every single dot over the I done perfectly.
If I were facing the same issue, I would frame it into something like balance the amount of strategic time versus tactical time, something like 3/4 to 1/4. Like basically spend at least 3/4 of your time for strategic tasks.
That's curious. I want to say I tried something like this, but I wasn't able to make it work. The crux of the challenge is that balance thing. And I have a tendency, when I get deep on something, that balance goes out. Like I lose control over that balance.
But that's why you basically do the time tracking or any sort of tracking. And if you have this, like, I don't know, daily journal or whatever, where you can actually see the balance, it kind of brings you. It's like the screen time, I'd say.
Yeah, I kind of know about that. But have you heard of a fine gentleman named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi? I think that's his name.
Flow.
And the flow state, and like how you get in the flow state, and it can get you so far down the river of productivity when you work on a single task without paying attention to the rest of the world. I think this is the trap that I think I'm falling into.
Have you considered just downshift into an engineer if you actually get this amazing feeling while doing the low-level, high-detail tasks and just enjoying them? And
I think that's... but by no means I consider myself as a kind of perfect engineer, but at the same time, I consider myself quite a proficient engineer, and I think on that type of thing, the state of flow is ever so slightly easier achievable for me, just because that would be doing something that I think I'm quite good at. So I can just flow with that stuff. But is it the most important thing for me to be doing? Well, that's the big question. And maybe I'll downshift, move to mountains, and just engineer all the way.
I would name it something like the CTO effect. Most chief technology or technical, I'm not sure what you put into T, but heads of engineering, I know, they do have a tendency once in a while just get into a task and deep dive into it. And they all name it really refreshing, like this sort of work and activity when it's not about meetings, it's not about communication, not about conveying some long discussions, providing feedback, formulating the phrasing, but rather working on the issue. You guys are so nostalgic about the feeling that you used to feel on the lower engineering positions. And it's kind of hard to give up because, well, let's be honest, meetings just don't get you into the flow state that often. And with the engineering tasks, you don't get distracted, you investigate a lot, like you can basically control your flow. It's just about you, it's not about someone else. And the way you go wherever you'd like to go. And in all other cases, you have to mind other people who are around and their reactions and commits and stuff.
That's an interesting point. I think for me personally, there is definitely a fair bit of what you describe, but also once again for me personally, I feel I generally do like that communication aspect as well, like working out abstractions, making sure that others get them and they make sense for the problem we are working on, because that I think with right toolbox we would be able to solve so much more. And I do enjoy that thing a great deal, and I can get into the flow state working on that type of problem as well. It's just, I guess, somehow I feel more, I get more of achievement feeling when I've done something with my hands, like written the code or something along those lines. And ever so slightly I get less of that when I had a successful conversation, when I persuaded someone that yes, this is the way to go, and they agreed, and we kind of considered their counterexamples, and we were able to work out a model that kind of works for everything even better than anything we could have imagined before. I would be happy at that moment, but I would be really on the seventh cloud when that thing gets implemented. That's when someone gets to code it.
Fair enough. Do you think I could challenge the idea of to don't list and see what your reaction would be?
Yeah, sure. Let's try that, because
So let's start with just an example. I used to have a sign in my bedroom that was a gadget-free zone. Basically, it's a to don't item, which says do not bring gadgets here.
Right.
And it took me just one occasion on breaking this rule, and it was an emergency. It was like an air attack on Kiev, and I had to bring the phone to check and track the stuff. And this sign just stopped working. Like since that day, once I broke the rule, I knew I shouldn't bring it in. I brought it in, and then it just lost all its power. Like now the phone was getting into the bedroom over and over again, because like you break it once, you basically break it forever, and then I need another sign or another motivation behind that, or something that was keeping the phone away for 2 months just stopped working at instance. And all the other occasions were not as important as the first one. The first one was exceptional, but it was enough to basically break the habit. It's like people who give up drinking or smoking or some serious addictions, and then they just like do it once, and basically the old habit builds up again. Don't you think that like you can spend a lot of time giving up, and then just another trigger will bring it all back?
Yes, I think that that's quite a distinct possibility for that. And I think I have a method or an idea for dealing with this. Remember how when we were discussing topics for the year? Oh, themes. I'm confusing things now, like the themes for the year. My theme was to kind of not, along the lines of not feel bad about stuff, or like feel good. And I think I'll be trying to employ this as a technique to not get back into things I want to avoid. So even if I slip up and like do something, oops, I did it again, I would be saying, all right, yeah, that's not great, but that's not terrible. Next time we can try better, be like more mindful or more attentive, and it will work out. But I agree with you, and I think I liked your idea, because I think I had similar thoughts that don't like negative motivation is not necessarily as good as positive motivation, and like most of don'ts can be replaced with do's, and do's are easier to track, right, and easier to focus on them to a certain extent.
All right, let's move to the second level of challenge. I could imagine how don'ts work on a very practical level, like don't park your car here, or don't put on this jacket anymore, like don't do simple things. But most of the examples that were in the article, in the podcast, and we are discussing right now, are actually consistent habits. And they are, in some cases, even addictions. Like people are just, I don't know, they spend time, they're used to spending time here. And to break this habit, they have to spend a lot of resource, focus, and energy just to break the loop, to stop doing stuff.
Right.
Let's say I watch YouTube stuff, like some streams of video games, like StarCraft, for instance. And this is a mindless activity. Like I jump to this mindless activity when I have a break and I would like to just drift away. There are a lot of other useful things I could be doing instead. Like I could go for a walk, I could do meditation, I could do a number of stuff, but I don't, because when I'm tired, I'm low on my energy level, and I just go with this like easiest and most paved solution, which I don't really enjoy anymore, but it's here. And I kind of live with that right now, because I think that reducing or overcoming this habit is a serious effort. And for me, just saying like don't do that or putting it on a don't list is not the equal. Like you can put it on the blacklist, but it will just cause more guilt when you do it again, rather than actually help you reducing the number. Like even if I track how much time I spend there, it would make me feel worse.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess I don't feel confident that I'll be able to overcome the second level of challenge you're putting forward for to don't list, because I hear what you're saying, and I kind of agree with you that it's simply saying putting something on something like to don't list is not a solution to a problem. It may be a step towards a solution, and that solution can take different forms, right? If one or I don't want to do something, it may be that I just plain don't, like, I just want to stop doing that, maybe because it's a bad habit or something like this, or maybe I want to replace it with something else. And depending on what kind of challenge I'm facing, I may take different steps from there, right? If I want to stop watching YouTube when I'm eating, I can decide that, hey, I will not take my cell phone to the kitchen or to the dining room where I eat, and it turns into like a different step compared to something else. And I guess if we frame it with the positive connotation in mind, so instead of doing less of X, I want to do more of Y, we can employ our favorite tool of themes, where you can kind of on a daily or weekly basis measure or evaluate how much progress you're doing on this direction, and bring mindfulness about this topic from this angle.
Right. Then let's move to the third level of my challenge. You and I enjoy listening to podcast Cortex, and one of the hosts there, CGP Grey, once made an amazing video about the fog of the future, right, the uncertainty, and when you see a task or a risk or a threat, right, you actually need time and experience to assess it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you don't have the relevant data, you have to risk, or you have to make a blind decision on whether it's high priority, low priority, right, important, not important, etc. As a professional, you probably have two sorts of tasks. Some tasks that you put into your own inbox, like some things you would like to do, and some tasks that come to your inbox from your manager, some of your peers, someone else, I don't know, like sure, some incoming tasks.
Sure.
They are basically split into generated by you and generated by others.
Right.
I think that the system of priorities that you will design by this don't list will be very helpful for your own tasks. Like tasks that you can manage, that you think about, that you prioritize, you define, you shape. But it will be way harder to implement for tasks that come from someone else, because they use a different point of reference and different priority system, and something that seems critical, crucial, or important for them, and then they will try engaging you in. Mm-hmm. You'll have to communicate a lot of these limitations and barriers and things you don't want to do in order not to get into this sort of tasks. Especially considering that you already have this, vision or reputation of a person who behaves in a certain way, and people kind of expect you're supposed to react the way, of course you're not supposed to, but people expect you to behave in a similar way. So my concern here, and I think that it would work better if you were designing 80% of your task and just dealing with 20% from people bringing you or delegating to you the tasks. Mm-hmm. But if the balance is different, let's say 50-50, that would be a waste of time.
You mean, to get it right, that you think that if there is high volume of incoming tasks, having my own rules for what I do versus what I don't creates additional friction and burden of
friction, and they come from different people, so you basically have to explain to each of these people the new principles that you deal with, because like they got yes from you on 5 occasions, and when they get a no from you next time, or when they get like a very detailed feedback why you're not going to do this task, that would cause confusion, because like previously it worked. Like this path was here all year, and now it doesn't work.
I think that's a great question, and you are 100% right on the idea that the rules would work for me, and maybe I'll spend a little bit of time about this idea, because when I tried to put some of my to-do items, and we already, I think, witnessed that, I tried to put them in a specific but still generic way so that you would understand what I mean. But in my head, they are a lot more specific and tied to actual things that I do, and some of them I either cannot share, or if I share them, they would not make sense to someone outside of the context I'm operating in. So it's kind of difficult that way to communicate. And I thought that maybe the items that they have in articles are also as generic, just because people didn't find a good way to be more specific about them, even though they had those ideas. So,
may I suggest an example here?
Yes,
maybe it would work.
Sure.
If I make a don't item, like don't schedule calls on Thursdays,
right?
It's my decision not to do that. Like I will put in the calendar no meetings day or something. But guess what? My team doesn't really know about that, and some of them will ignore this tag on my calendar, and they will send invites, and then I'll have to communicate to each and every one of them that Thursday is a no meeting day for them.
Right. Yes, and I think one of the strategies I think that I'm trying to employ with to don't send incoming requests is by allowing myself to be a little bit more proactive, and then instead of responding to team scheduling meetings on Thursdays and me trying to deflect them somehow and explain them that no, Thursday is off limits, you cannot touch my calendar on Thursday. Instead, like if I know that meeting is coming, I'll go and schedule it for Tuesday next week instead of Thursday, or something like this.
Yeah, but again, that's your responsibility when you schedule the meetings. But when meetings are scheduled for you and you're just an invitee,
yes, I guess that will be a challenge, and I don't think I have an answer for that would work 100% of the times. I think that a little bit of idea would be to kind of gradually kind of clean up Thursday as much as possible by maybe taking proactive steps with moving meetings ahead of time out of Thursdays.
Having implemented 2 focus days in my week, I can tell you that it works perfectly with some regular stuff like sync-ups, retros, and things that are planned in advance. But like every week, there is something crazy happening, and people say, I know it's your focus day, but please, can we talk for 45 minutes, because it's crucial, and we have to make a decision today, and I can't wait till Friday.
Yeah, that's tough, right?
And then it brings us back, and then like when somebody sees this thing on your calendar that you have already talked to John, it's kind of not a strict focus day, but if it's important to John, then maybe if it's something important to me, I can also communicate it to you. And then basically your priorities are just like all around the place.
I remember somewhere seeing this saying, or like a banner or something like that, or like a catchphrase, which was going something along the lines of, if it's not painful, it's not prioritization, or something like this. You can employ something like that. And I guess with meetings, it's particularly tough, and that's really a curved ball, because for tasks, the strategy that I was about to propose was that, hey, if I don't want, well, if I feel like it would not be a best use of my time to work on something, I can still find someone for whom it would be a rather good use of their time to work on on something like that, and maybe provide guidance, or maybe send it back with additional information or context of where to look for solutions. So that can work with calendars, I guess. And meeting invites, it's a bit difficult because it's a lot more binary. It's either happens on a particular day or it doesn't. And if you don't want it to happen, it might be hard to communicate that to other people and persuade them to stick to your priorities.
And then they just push on different emotional triggers, like, all other 7 guys can meet only on this spot, and you're the only one who has like just a focus day here. Can we please do that just once? And then this once happens next week, and then again, and again, and again.
Well, I guess maybe it would be a bit selfish, but on that one, okay, can we turn this thing? Can we try to do a thought experiment and turn this thing around? And you say like, hey, yeah, if you got 7 other guys, you've got more than enough. I'll read the meeting minutes and provide my feedback
and you'll
afterwards.
Accept the decision that you disagree with, or you you wouldn't be able to step up to replace the others because you were not there when they made the call.
But then, like, if they have seven other people, and if they say they really need me, then you say like, no, you can get me on Friday. If you really need me, it's not prioritization until it pains, I guess. But
right.
That's tough. It's easy to be an armchair quarterback or something like that and say that, no, I'll send them away. And then when I get a meeting on the day, I wanted to focus on something when it comes from high up, or someone says that everything is on fire, the ship is sinking, we need you, please help. You cave in and say like, oh, all right, this one last time, and it opens the door for many more occurrences of the same.
I think I'd like to suggest an alternative to don'ts lists. This is the thing that I've been doing for 3 or 4 years now, and it's a personal retrospective. Basically, I review my processes, meetings, and calendar every 6 months. And I see what sort of tasks I were doing. Like, I save all my tasks in my task manager for 6 months, and then I look through them, what sorts of activities I was doing, what's the balance of these activities when they were scheduled, and then I try seeing what worked well, like where I'm happy with the results. Basically all the retrospective questions, but not about the team, not about the project, not about a specific scope of work, but about myself. And going through the same questions you would go on a usual retro kind of helps me reimagine my regular meetings, reimagine my schedule, reimagine my priorities for the next period, and not just fixing the mistakes, but also choosing the new priorities, different decision-making systems, and alternative approaches to even team formation sometimes.
I think that sounds great, and any kind of any form of being sensible and mindful about how one spends their time is helpful in this regard. And for myself, I can tell that, hey, when I stick to this and then like discipline myself to do that kind of work for planning and evaluating where my time goes, everything is a lot more manageable, easier, and productive. But then when things get out of control, this probably would be the thing I would suggest everyone not to give up. Like when under pressure, this is something that must be kept as a part of regular activities, even though if you ask me, I don't know how to ensure for that thing to be a necessary and absolute must for regular working activities, because I myself guilty of giving up some of those things, if not all of them, if things turn particularly dire from certain perspective, even though they're never really as dire to give up planning and retrospectives and being mindful about your work.
I think one of the reasons retrospectives work for me and to-dos and to-don'ts don't, because they come from different levels. Retrospectives are designed to improve the process, but not to filter specific tasks. It's not a planning, it's not a grooming meeting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different sort of activity, and it engages more strategic thinking. You have to change the perspective to see what has been working, what should be, what we should be doing, what we should be changing in the processes overall. And I think out of all daily routines, retrospective is the closest to what helps me redefine the priorities and then communicate them clearly. When I just change rules for myself or make restrictions for myself, then I spend too long recalibrating the team and team's expectation and people around me. I have to deal with dozens of people on a weekly basis and like delivering them, like, guys, starting from next week, I'm not available on Tuesdays and I do only this sort of task and this is my top priority and this is not my priority anymore. Like communicating all this stuff is frustrating both for me and for them. But when I change the entire procedure, like I reschedule the calls, I stop coming to some regular meetings, I schedule some other regular meetings instead to redesign the process and ask people to report not during the sync ups, but during the reporting meetings that will happen just monthly, not on a weekly basis. So basically, I can reimagine the entire process. But I understand that in this case, I have much more influence on the processes, and like I'm in the position where I can redesign everything, and I can totally understand why some people can't do that, and they could be trapped in the process designed by a manager or just a team that has been working like this for a while, and I can totally see how it might go wrong.
I have kind of one point on this, maybe to build a little bit on this idea. I'm totally with you on the idea that when you are part of a bigger machinery, it is naturally more difficult to change things around. But at the same time, I think, and a couple of times it worked like that in my experience, that when you feel a problem with how this big machinery is set up and that there are painful moments, it's very likely that you are not the only one who feels that, and you can find allies to kind of maybe try and change that machinery, and having a mindset where there is a problem, there is an opportunity to fix it. And if like that, how did that to don't list item said? Don't complain. So if you don't complain, but try to find a way to fix that, and like think about this as an opportunity for providing a solution, it can help. And finding allies in my practice worked quite well on a number of occasions.
That is actually a very good piece of advice, because I think in my case, I have already mentioned this no meetings day. Mm-hmm. We managed to integrate them fast because I just happened to talk to two managers who were facing the same issue that I had. And we kind of informally agreed that would be a good solution. So when we came to the whole team meeting and suggested this idea, I already knew that some informal leaders are going to be on board. And they did say, hey, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. And it kind of started the wave. And ta-da, we have Thursday as a focus day.
Right. And you may remember that old video from TED, I think, by Derek Sievers, where he argues that
how to start a movement.
Yeah, how to start a movement, where he argues that the second person that joins the movement is actually maybe even more important for the overall success than the first one, who's the shaker. Right. I need to fix that habit of having ideas while we are talking and then diverting into discussing something else and forgetting the idea. I should have pen and pencil and piece of paper to write them down. Yeah, I think I need to fix setup. I'm not sure if the don't list is going to help me with this, and I'm trying to kind of keep the thing going, hoping that the idea would reoccur to me
Weren't you the one telling me that you actually have quite a comfortable system of note-taking on your table, on your desk, when there's a page somewhere?
Right, and I think I generally have that, but I guess because of the physical setup which I have for the podcasting, it's not as kind of conducive for taking notes. I think there is a bit of friction and incompatibility between my system and how my table is laid out when we record the podcast.
Maybe you should actually use the voice memos. Like next time you have these 3 points or 3 stories, you could name them, and I will write down for you.
Well, yeah, maybe I think so. Even if I just speak them out loud, it would help me to remember them.
But guys, in case you're listening here by minute 50-ish of this episode, I should warn you that this thing is contagious. One of our listeners listened to Dima's episode frequently, and then in the conversation last week, she was like, I had 2 points, but I forgot the first one while I was telling the first one. I know where it comes from. Like, I can definitely track the origin of this syndrome.
Right. Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. I know, like,
so I believe we could call it a day then.
Right.
And our next episode is going to be a book club.
Right. And the book
you got a book from the library?
Yes.
For this one?
Yes, that turns out this is a real thing. In at least in London, you can easily get stuff from library.
So we are going to discuss the decision book, and it's basically a collection of decision-making models, but we'll talk about that in a few weeks.
Until then, see you and have a good week.
Maybe even 2.
Maybe even 2.